Okay, well, I don't have very much time because I've got to go to school soon, but let me update you on what this is. I was thinking about how to communicate the things that I want to communicate more about, how to find more courage and adventure, and I realized that half the time we're talking about things that people haven't even read, or things that people haven't even read, played, watched, whatever, because, our purpose is to show that we can find meaning in any story. And that's what this video is. We wanted to go ahead and introduce what the next thing we're going to be talking about is, which will be the Way of Kings. The only problem is that it was our first try, and so we're still learning a lot about things, but the basic gist is that we wanted to pitch the Way of Kings to you, and Levi takes the helm on this one because he is the king of the Way of Kings. He's, which is kind of a funny thing to say, but he knows the book so well. And in fact, after having him pitch this to me a couple weeks ago, I decided to read the book again just because he talks about it really well, and I did. And oh my gosh, if I can add anything to the pitch, it would just be that this is a book where somebody's mere decision can make me want to crawl into the fetal position and cry my eyes out because it resonates so deeply with what I know me and like all of my friends have been going through. This is a book where you understand people on a new level because you get to go inside their thoughts and really hear what their heart is asking for. This is a book that is full of a beautiful world, a fun adventure that you want to participate in, and it's really meaningful. So I hope that you enjoy Levi's take on this pitch, on his pitch of this book, and I hope that you give it a read because it seriously is something worth. This is really something worth letting change your life. Anyway, take courage.
Okay, so this is going to be a little bit different. This is a little bonus episode, if you will. Maybe we'll come up with like a cute little name for it. But right now, I'm just going to go on a tangent, and I'm going to pitch mostly to anybody watching this what is my personal favorite non-religious book of all time, being The Way of Kings.
And it's pitching it to me. I've read The Way of Kings before, but it's been a hot minute. And I think if anybody deserves to pitch this book, it would be Levi.
Yes, he has won the right. This is maybe, for Peter, this is less going to be a pitch of like, you should read this book, and more of a pitch of, if this book isn't in your top 3, what are you doing? The Way of Kings, it's a fantasy book by Brandon Sanderson, for those who don't know. It's pretty big, which can make it overwhelming for people, and I understand that. I will admit I do have a little bit of bias because, again, putting aside like religious scripture and stuff like that, there is no book in the world that has had more of an impact on my life than The Way of Kings did. There's a whole sob story behind it, but there was a specific moment reading it that it just completely changed the direction of my life. So it's very, very meaningful to me. But even putting that aside, the themes of this book are just so moving and so brilliant to me. And so I want to start out talking about the two main characters that we're following, that being Kaladin and Dalinar. Kaladin is sort of like the main character of the book, I would say. Throughout the book, you're also getting like flashbacks of his childhood and how he got to where he is at this point. Kaladin he starts out as this incredible squad leader. He's the soldier. Everyone calls him Stormblessed. They say that his squad is lucky because it has the fewest casualties. They're like, oh, you're in Stormblessed squad, you're going to be fine. Like, don't worry about it. And you see him as like this great hero. He jumps in and takes on like 4 guys at once and he wins. And it's just like this amazing thing. But then the chapter ends with him losing that battle. And his whole squad gets killed and he gets sold into slavery, basically. For me, first reading that was a huge shock. I did not see that coming, but it's like chapter 2, so I don't mind. I do not mind spoiling it. And then you get a little bit of like where he ends up. He's put on a bridge crew, which is just this horrible job of running bridges for an army fighting a war on this area called the Shattered Plains. Basically, just miles upon miles of huge plateaus separated by chasms. So the bridges will run ahead of the army, put it down, the army crosses the bridges, they cross, pick the bridge back up and keep going. And so it's brutal. But then when they get to the actual battle, they're the first ones to go by the arrows, because if the enemy can get the bridges down, then the actual army coming at them isn't any threat because they can't get across without them. And so Kaladin is just completely defenseless, watching people drop like flies around him, and it crushes him, it breaks him. He canonically suffers from like chronic major depressive disorder, and survivor's guilt is a big part of that. He always wants to try to save everybody. He always wants to try to protect everybody. So being in this situation where there's just nothing he can do and people are dying constantly and his life is miserable, it destroys him. Somebody comes and talks to him and is like, you know, you used to try so hard. You used to try to help people. You used to protect people. And, you know, like, what happened? He's like, well, I failed. I can't save these people. Everybody else I've tried to save has already died. These people are going to die. There's nothing I can do about it. They're dead anyway. And what she says is basically like, well, if they're dead anyway, what do you have to lose? Like, why not just try one more time? And again, there's a lot more that goes into this, but ultimately he does decide like, okay, screw it. We're going to try to save my bridge crew. And so there's a big shift in him from that point forward. And he's trying to earn the loyalty of his bridge crew. He's trying to train them to be able to run the bridges more effectively, trying to find ways to help them survive, trying to find ways to get them to rally and to work together. And it's really hard because they're all in the same state he was. They're broken. They're hopeless. There's like, this is a miserable life. There's no point. And he's trying to help them see a change and help them find a life worth living, and ultimately somehow be able to stop them from just constantly dying when they're on these bridge runs, right? His story is very meaningful to me, so it's hard for you not to go on tangent about it. Then we're looking at Dalinar. Dalinar is the uncle to the king of the most powerful nation on this continent. He is one of the most politically powerful men in the world. And he is the leader of his princedom. He's a high prince over his sort of section of this kingdom. He is in the same area, the Shattered Plains, fighting the same war. He's not in the same army that Kaladin is a slave for, but he's part of this same conflict. And he is known as this like world-renowned, like amazing warrior general. He had the nickname the Blackthorn, and it was just like he was this unstoppable force on the battlefield, and like everybody looked up to him and admired him so much. He was just this amazing person in their eyes. But at the time that the Way of Kings is starting, he is kind of losing that. He started to receive visions that he doesn't understand, and as the reader, you don't really know what they're about either. But one of the main things that it keeps telling him is to unite them. And he's like, well, I don't know what that means, but I'm going to try to unite my kingdom because it was really divided at that point. And so he is trying to find a better way to go about this war, a better way to lead. He's trying to be a better man, to live by honor instead of just by living by bloodshed. And suddenly nobody respects him anymore.
So that's very different than what they're used to.
Right, because before he was just like, it was all war. That's what their country is kind of built on. But he's starting to change and think that that's not the best way. He wants to act honorably. He wants to live by these codes of war that used to be a big part of this. And a huge part of what he's trying to do is a book that exists in world that's called The Way of Kings. It's almost like at this point in time, it's sort of like a taboo sort of thing where it's seen as like outdated and I don't know if politically incorrect is the right word, but it's not a book that's like revered or respected for the takes that it makes, but it's all about like how to be a true leader and how to like be an honorable leader and all these things, and all about like not putting yourself above the people that you're in command of, and all these things about like true leadership. And he's trying to emulate that, but it's hard. It's against his nature, right? Like that's not the kind of man he ever was. It's what he wants to be now, but he is struggling with it. He's making mistakes, and nobody is respecting him, partly because of this culture, but also partly because he just doesn't really know how to do it. He doesn't know how to be an honorable, good leader, despite being one of the most politically powerful leaders and men in the world, as the brother to the king, or uncle, former brother to the king, right? And what makes the Way of Kings so enticing to me is the way that just that name, the Way of Kings, kind of puts those two stories together. Where you have one man who is born to rule, basically, and is struggling so hard to try to live and understand the Way of Kings, so to speak, and to be a good, honorable leader. And you have Kaladin, who is just the lowest of the low scum. Even like before he was a slave, he was already like just a drudge of society, but then he became a slave, and even as a slave, he's in one of the most like expendable, like you're just here to take bullets, run bridges, take arrows, I guess. So he's nothing, but he's demonstrating it. Like he's showing how to be a leader. He's showing that he does understand the Way of Kings,
Like what honor is.
right? And you know, it takes a lot of effort. And he also makes mistakes and missteps, and that's part of what I love is the characters feel very human. They make a lot of mistakes, and they will have like backslides. Just the contrast between those two stories and how they're working side by side, especially as they're both part of the same conflict on completely opposite ends of it, is just so fascinating to me. And I love they're both very flawed, and they're both very respectable in their own way because of what they're trying to be. Maybe Kaladin's a little bit better at what he's trying to be than Dalinar is, but Dalinar is trying so hard. He's very earnest about it. He wants to be a good man. He wants to bring his nation together. He just doesn't know how to do it, and he's trying to figure it out. And that's a huge part of his journey in that book. I've heard people say that his plotline is kind of boring because there's not as much like stuff happening, I guess. But if you look at what's happening with him as a character and what he's trying to do and what he's trying to be, it is so like enthralling to me.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say I will get from reading this book?
This feels like such a like cheap cop-out answer, but I feel like it just makes you want to be a better person. And it makes you feel like you can overcome hardships. Because I think that's a really big theme of not just this book specifically, because what I'm talking about is pretty specific to the Way of Kings. Like the plot expands and goes to more characters and everything beyond this book. But so that's the Way of Kings. But the series as a whole, a huge theme of it is working through adversity and bettering yourself. And you see that in Kaladin, who is trying to be better. He's trying to fight this depression that's constantly kind of pulling at him. He's trying to fight this horrible circumstance. And you see that he is overcoming and he's persevering. And, you know, Dalinar doesn't have as many like physical obstacles as Kaladin does, but he's still facing a lot of opposition. But he's standing his ground and he's saying, I'm not going to bend on this. You may all think I'm crazy. You may all think that I've lost my edge. But I believe that this is right. I'm going to stand by it. And so you see them both working through these hardships, very committed to improving themselves and becoming who they think they need to be and doing what they think they need to do, despite just constant backlash and constant resistance. And they're written in such a way, and again, this is true of the series as a whole, beyond just this specific book. The characters feel very real, and their flaws and their struggles feel very real, at least to me, and it makes them very easy to relate to, because I find characters a lot easier to relate to when we're looking at their struggles than at their successes. Because when I look at myself, it's a lot easier to see my own struggles and limitations than it is to see what I'm good at. And so seeing characters like Kaladin struggle with things that I can in some way relate to, even if it's just the way that he's feeling and not as, thankfully, not what he's actually physically going through, right? It's easy to relate to him, it's easy to latch onto him. And then when you see him work through that, you see him not accept the circumstances that he's been given and trying to overcome them. It's so much easier for me to bring myself along with that because I've latched onto him in his lowest. And I use him as an example because he's the character that I can relate to the most, but I think it's true of pretty much any of the characters in this series because they all have struggles and things that they are holding them back and that they're trying to fight against. But again, working through that and learning to deal with it, learning to live with it, and learning to overcome it is a huge element of this series. And for me, that was one of the most empowering things, is just feeling like I could be better, and seeing examples that I want to live up to. Because like when I read those series, I do want to be more like Dalinar. Like, yeah, he's really flawed and he doesn't really know what he's doing, especially at the beginning, but he is trying so hard to do the right thing, and he does so many things that are just amazing in like his selflessness and his honor. You're like, I want to be that kind of person. I want to be this like brave hero like Kaladin, you know? And that's a common theme in most stories, but it just the way that the characters are written and the way that their personal journeys feel like such an integral part of the plot just makes that way more effective for me in this book series than anywhere else I've ever experienced it.
Well, I should read it again, shouldn't I?
You should. And anybody who just sat through however many minutes of me just going on a tangent, you should read it too.
Yeah.
Again, The Way of Kings is easily my favorite book I have ever read. It is absolutely worth it.
It's just tradition that it feels wrong. The breastplates and guards were ornamented as well.
No.
Up, away down from the staging yard, and not insane. It was time to trust him and cuts, like tiny, and ran this way and that with their vests. Carpenters and apprentices rushed out of the way. Metal shouted orders. An actual run was the only time he did that without a shawl. Bridge leaders, showing a modicum of leadership, bellowed for their teams to